Welcome to Haunted Talks, the official podcast of the Haunted Walk, offering ghost tours and paranormal adventures in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, Ontario, and online experiences to anyone in this mortal realm. My name is Jim Dean. I am the creative director, and it is my privilege to be your haunted host for this episode. In the shadow of a Valentine's Day just past, where echoes of romance still linger, we're drawn to a tale from a time when Chicago streets whispered not of love, but of rivalry and revenge. This story, set against the backdrop of the Jazz Age's shimmering facade, reveals a darker heart beating within the city, where the night was alive not just with music and laughter, but with the plotting of two underworld bosses vying for control. Imagine, if you will, a Chicago where the jazz was as intoxicating as the forbidden liquor that flowed through its veins. A city split not just by its gleaming waterways, but by the ambitions of Al Capone and George Bugs Moran. Their feud was not merely business. It was a vendetta that would culminate in an act so bold, so ruthless, that it would leave an indelible mark on the history of the city. In today's episode, we explore one of the most notorious unsolved mysteries in American history, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. But before we get to that, we are reaching out to all great storytellers, lovers of dark history, and paranormal enthusiasts to invite them to join our spooky and very friendly team. We are hiring tour guides and storytellers in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto. Being a tour guide is how I started my career with the Haunted Walk, and I absolutely loved it. There really is no job quite like it. If you have ever thought about applying, or know someone who should, now is the time. Applying is quick and easy. Just visit hauntedwalk.com/jobs and begin your paranormal adventure with us. In the last episode, I mentioned how we started our Alone in the Dark experience at Ottawa's Cumberland Heritage Village Museum. To give you a quick update, after 3 nights, our experiments have generated some very compelling results. Our touch-activated motion sensors have been triggered. A guest felt something or someone touch them in the dark. And on an evening I was there, an amazing Estes session culminated with an extremely loud bang that caused all of us to jump. We are so excited to see what will happen next as we continue to investigate this unique property with the public. And we want to invite you to join us. Alone in the Dark at Cumberland Heritage Village Museum runs every Friday and Saturday night until the end of May. And for a limited time, we are offering 15% off tickets with the promo code CONTACT. That promo is going to be ending very soon, so grab your tickets ASAP. We also have ghost tours running every weekend now in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto. And if you're starting to think about your March break plans, we would love to be a part of them. We have tours in all 3 cities throughout that week. And as always, you can use the promo code Haunted Talks to save 15% off your ghost tour tickets. Look for us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Haunted Walk, and be sure to follow, rate, and review the show wherever you listen. In the Roaring '20s, Chicago was a city of contrasts. Jazz flowed as freely as the illegal liquor, and while the nation was dry on paper, thanks to Prohibition, Chicago was anything but. At the heart of this paradox was a fierce rivalry between two gangland titans. Al Capone, leader of the Chicago Outfit, an Italian-American organized crime syndicate or crime family based out of Chicago's South Side, and George "Bugs" Moran was the leader of the predominantly Irish North Side gang. The tension between Capone and Moran wasn't just business, it was deeply personal. Both sought control over the city's lucrative bootlegging operations, and both were willing to kill for it. As the 1920s progressed, the violence escalated. Capone and Moran became engaged in a deadly game of cat and mouse, each attack more brazen than the last. The city watched in horror as bombings, drive-by shootings, and brutal beatings became all too common. The stage was set for a bloody confrontation that would shock the nation and etch a bloody chapter into the history of American crime. The plan was audacious in its simplicity and brutality. Capone, seeking to eliminate Moran and take undisputed control of Chicago's underworld, set a devious trap. A shipment of whiskey, smuggled across the Detroit River from Canada, too good to pass up, was used as the bait. On the morning of February 14th, 1929, Chicago was gripped by the usual winter chill, its streets bustling with the day-to-day activities of city life. The SMC Cartage Company garage on North Clark Street, typically a hive of activity, was unusually quiet. Inside, members of George "Bugs" Moran's gang awaited the delivery of the whiskey, a routine transaction in the risky world of bootlegging. As the clock ticked closer to 10:30 a.m., the tension was palpable. The men gathered in the garage were on edge, their breaths visible in the cold air, their eyes darting to the entrance with every sound. They were hardened criminals, no strangers to the dangers of their trade, but the promise of a deal too good to refuse had clouded their usual caution. Then, without warning, the sound of an engine broke the silence. A police car, black and imposing, rolled up to the garage, its arrival sending a ripple of tension through the men inside. 4 figures stepped out, 2 clad in the unmistakable uniforms of Chicago's finest, their faces stern and authoritative. The men inside relaxed momentarily, mistaking this for a routine shakedown, a common occurrence in their line of work. Little did they know, the wolves had donned sheep's clothing, and the slaughter was about to begin. The officers' orders were sharp, demanding compliance as they ushered the men against the wall. Confused, but not overly alarmed, the gang members obliged, believing they might avoid trouble by cooperating. The realization of their grave misjudgment came too late, as the supposed officers revealed their true intentions, drawing out their Tommy guns with a swift and practiced motion. The roar of gunfire was a brutal symphony of death that echoed through the streets. Bullets flew with merciless precision, cutting down the men where they stood. Within moments, the grim deed was done. The assailants, their identities obscured by their cunning disguises, made a swift exit, leaving behind a scene of carnage cloaked in the veil of a police raid gone wrong. The first to stumble upon the scene were met with a sight so gruesome it would haunt them for years to come. 7 bodies lay strewn across the blood-soaked floor. The air was thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder and the metallic tang of blood, a stark testament to the violence that had just unfolded. Frank Gussenberg, one of Moran's enforcers, was the only victim found alive at the scene, despite being mortally wounded with 14 bullets. While still conscious, he refused to cooperate with the arriving police officers, honoring the code of silence, famously stating, "No one shot me." Amid the chaos, an eerie sound pierced the aftermath. The howling of Highball, one of the victim's dogs, the only survivor of the massacre, as it had been tied to a car bumper nearby and spared from the hail of bullets. George Moran, the intended target, narrowly escaped the deadly encounter by arriving late to the garage. Upon seeing the police car outside, Moran chose to walk away, unknowingly saving his life, but forever diminishing his power in Chicago's underworld. Conveniently, Al Capone was in Florida when the massacre took place, providing him with an alibi and adding to the mystery and speculation surrounding the event. The public reaction to the Valentine's Day massacre was one of horror and outrage. The brutal slaying of 7 men in such a calculated and public fashion laid bare the extent of gang violence that had taken hold of Chicago. The massacre became a national scandal, forcing law enforcement and political leaders to reckon with the reality of organized crime's grip on the Windy City. For Al Capone, the massacre was a double-edged sword. While it effectively eliminated one of his formidable rivals, it also marked the beginning of his downfall. The intense scrutiny that followed the massacre led to increased efforts by law enforcement to dismantle his criminal empire. Capone's infamy had reached its zenith, but so too had the determination to bring him to justice. Ironically, it was not for the numerous violent crimes attributed to him that led to his eventual arrest and conviction, but rather, it was tax evasion. In 1931, Al Capone was sentenced to 11 years in prison, marking a stunning fall from grace for the man who once had been the undisputed king of Chicago's criminal underworld. His conviction signified a pivotal moment in the battle against organized crime. Capone's reign came to an end not with a bullet, but with a court gavel and a conviction for tax evasion. His health declined in prison due to complications from syphilis. He spent his final years in Miami, a shadow of his former self, until his death in 1947. George Bugs Moran, on the other hand, found his power significantly diminished after the massacre. The loss of key members of his gang and the tightening grip of law enforcement on organized crime left him struggling to maintain any hold over Chicago's underworld. He eventually gave up and left the gang, though not the criminal lifestyle. He reverted to his earlier gangster ways of petty crime such as mail fraud and robbery. On July 6, 1946, he was arrested for his involvement in the robbery of a Dayton, Ohio tavern, and he received a sentence of 20 years after being found guilty. He was paroled in 1956, but was then immediately arrested for his role in the 1945 robbery of a bank in Ohio. He was found guilty the following year and sentenced to 10 more years in prison. Moran died of lung cancer a few months into his final sentence. Despite the infamy of the crime, no one was ever arrested, tried, or convicted for the murders committed during the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Despite various suspects and theories put forth over the years, the case remains officially unsolved. An interesting side note is that when the building that was the SMC Cartage Company garage was torn down in the 1960s by the city of Chicago, some of the bricks were saved. And now, if you go to the Mob Museum in Las Vegas, you can stand in front of the wall where the Valentine's Day Massacre took place, which has to be one of the most dark photo ops possibly in the world. Today, the Valentine's Day Massacre stands as a dark symbol of the Prohibition era's violence, a testament to the lawlessness that ruled Chicago in the 1920s. It serves as a grim reminder of the human cost of the battle for control over the city's illicit alcohol trade and the complex interplay between crime, law enforcement, and society. The massacre has been immortalized in film, literature, and popular culture, a fascination that endures nearly a century later. As our curtain falls on the grim spectacle of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre and the tumultuous lives of its central figures, we are left to reflect on the indelible marks left on the fabric of American history. The bloodshed on that cold February day and the subsequent downfall of towering figures like Capone and Moran highlight the inevitable collapse that follows the pursuit of power through violence. We're reminded of the enduring human struggle between right and wrong, and order and chaos. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. If by chance any of you have taken a selfie at the Mob Museum in Las Vegas in front of the wall, I would really love to see it. So be sure to tag us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or Twitter, all at Haunted Walk. As always, a special thanks to our Haunted Talks team, including Michelle Dennis, our one-of-a-kind audio editor. For information on our Alone in the Dark experience at Ottawa's Cumberland Heritage Village Museum, or any of our ghost tours in Kingston, Ottawa, or Toronto, please visit our website, hauntedwalk.com. March break is coming, and the tours often sell out, so be sure to get yours soon. And you can always use the promo code Haunted Talks, name of the show, Haunted Talks, one word, at checkout to get 15% off all our ghost tour tickets. If you've been enjoying the episodes, we'd love for you to follow, rate, and review the show wherever you listen. Until we meet again, happy Valentine's Day, and sweet dreams.